Before we jump into the content, I just want to go quickly over the technical specifications. You should see an introductory slide on the left side of your screen. If not, and if you are having difficulty with display and you have another web browser on your system, you may want to try switching to a different browser. The audio will be provided through the teleconference line that is provided on the introductory slide. Please email Matt Valerius at the email address provided, or today at the email address provided if you are experiencing any technical problems. Large number of people we have online with us today. We will be taking questions electronically throughout the session. We have built in time for Q&A following each presentation, and even with the delays, I believe we will be able to accommodate the questions. To ask a question to our presenters, please type in the bottom of the Q&A box and click Send to all analysts. Also use the Q&A to enter any technical questions or problems. We'll help you with those the best we can. Thank you much for taking part in this event today. Messier, the Assistant Secretary of the Office of Vocational and Adult Education, would like to say a few opening words welcoming all of you as well. Brenda?
Thank you very much, Cheryl, for moderating today's event. On behalf of Secretary Duncan, Secretary Martha Cantor, and the entire Department of Education, I want to welcome you and thank each of you for joining us today for the first event in 2013 Community College Webinar Series. And again, thank you for hanging in there. We apologize for the delay. The administration is very proud to focus on community colleges as gateways of opportunity for all Americans, as well as drivers of a robust economy and job market. While we know that you are being challenged with increased enrollment and declining resources in many instances, support and invest in your success. I want our partners on this webinar series, the American Association of Community Colleges and the Association of Community College Trustees, for their valuable input on the development of this event. Most importantly, I want to thank our audience for your interest and engagement on these critical issues, for all the tremendous work you're doing out there on the ground to expand educational opportunities for our students. We all know how valuable community colleges are and the many ways they serve their local communities. This webinar will focus on the role of community colleges in helping adult learners transition from adult basic education and GED programs to post-secondary education, an absolutely critical function given the over 90 million adults in the U.S. with only basic or below basic skills. In the workforce between the ages of 18 and 64, 75 million do not hold a post-secondary credential and are not enrolled in college. These adults we desperately need to reach, both to ensure our country has the skilled workforce we need to remain competitive in the 21st century economy, and to ensure every American has the opportunity to achieve their educational and career goals. We have a two-pronged strategy that addresses basic literacy needs and creates opportunities for incumbent and dislocated workers to return to school to gain the skills and credentials they need to secure good jobs and advance in their careers. We have to do college graduates from older students, career changers, students enrolled in college and then left before attaining a degree, and the unemployed. To reach out to people who might never have considered higher education a few years ago. In short, we need a fundamental paradigm shift from the view of education as a one-shot opportunity to a lifelong pursuit. This is the kind of work our panelists are engaged in today, and I'm thrilled to have them offer their knowledge and expertise. So let's take a moment to introduce our distinguished panelists. Our first presenter is Barbara Endel, the Program Director of the Accelerating Opportunity Initiative at Jobs for the Future. Barbara brings a wealth of community college and workforce development experience to this discussion. Most recently, she worked as a policy consultant to JFF on the Developmental Education Initiative, a project of achieving the dream focused on utilizing data to improve student success in community colleges. Prior to JFF, Barbara helped the Greater Cincinnati Workforce Network create pathways for over 3,000 participants, a project funded by the National Fund for Workforce Solutions. Following Barbara will be Alan Prez, a principal scientist at Apt Associates. She will present findings from a recent study conducted on behalf of the Office of Vocational Adult Education on transforming ABE and GED reading instruction to better prepare adult learners for demands of college-level coursework. She also brings extensive adult education and workforce training experience to this discussion. She has directed research, evaluation, policy, technical assistance, and demonstration projects in adult education and workforce development for more than 30 years. Completed 3 national studies of promising strategies in adult reading instruction and directing 2 evaluations of adult career pathways programs in which reading instruction is a key focus. For the past 7 years, she has worked with the Oregon's Department of Community Colleges and Workforce Development, developing the Oregon Pathways for Adult Basic Skills Transition to Education and Work Initiative, a systemic approach to enhancing ABE services and coordination between ABE and post-secondary workforce development programs. Rounding out our panel today is Amy Dulcimer, the director of the Pre-College Academic Programming Department at LaGuardia Community College, City University of New York. Amy will provide a fascinating local example of a community college that has purposefully designed its ABE and GED programs to provide their adult students with a strong bridge to college. It manages a variety of adult literacy, workforce development, and post-secondary transition initiatives at LaGuardia, including the GED Bridge to Career and College project and several NIBEST Adult Career Pathways programs. These integrated medical office clinical technician program, the supporting adults through vocational EMT program, the integrated central surgical technician program, and the integrated community health worker training program. I thank all of our panelists in advance for their impressive work and their participation in today's event. I'm sure we will all learn a lot from all the work. And with that, let me turn it over to Barbara, who will begin the discussion to discuss the Creating Opportunity Initiative.
Thank you, Linda. I'm very pleased to be here on behalf of Jobs for the Future, and really want to thank you, Brenda, and your staff, Johan and Cheryl Keenan, and others that have been so supportive of this important national project to address how adult education can better prepare learners to transition to post-secondary. And I want to acknowledge the real champions of this work, the 8 states and over 55 community colleges that are engaged in accelerating opportunity, many of whom are logged in today. So I'm going to go ahead and take a few minutes and just do a very quick journey through our Accelerating Opportunity Initiative. And to me, I want to get to the most important aspects, which are those transformational efforts our states are doing and our colleges are doing that I think will be instructive and hopefully catalytic for those that are on the webinar today. So aptly mentioned at the beginning, I wanted to just set the table very quickly for why Jobs for the Future and our partners and our funders and states and colleges are engaged in this work at the beginning. We know there's a tremendous number of Americans with basic or below basic literacy skills, and the number of adult ages have less than a high school credential is still quite high. We also have a significant population of our Americans that have no high school credential, and we know that the jobs of the future will not will definitely require something beyond a high school diploma or a GED. We also, since 1979, investments in both adult education and workforce development have declined in real terms. And as we all know, and we are, in essence, speaking to the choir, getting a post-secondary credential is essentially one of the only ways to break intergenerational transmission of poverty in America. So, for these reasons, we are deeply engaged as partners in this work to find ways to ensure that adults can successfully transition to a credential that has labor market value. The Accelerating Opportunity is a national, multi-state, multi-year initiative. It's managed by Jobs for the Future and a tremendous set of partners that are included in this initiative, including NCTN, National College Transition Network, National Council of Workforce Education, And obviously, we're standing on the very broad shoulders of the Washington State Board for Community and Technical Colleges. So these really represent some of the best minds in the country to essentially help address these issues that we're all focusing on. We have private foundations that are engaged in funding this work, including the Gates Foundation, the Joyce Foundation, Kresge, Kellogg, Open Society, University of Phoenix Foundation, and the Arthur Blank and the Robert Woodruff Foundations in Georgia. And so we're so thrilled to have these sorts of investments. We have a number of states that are engaged in this work. As I mentioned earlier, we now have 8 states. We just include Arkansas as our latest state from last week, who just joined. They are investing their own resources, by the way, into this initiative. This packed over 50 community colleges across the country. Actually, this framework around accelerating opportunity includes 3 major pieces of the work. I obviously think that both the program redesign and the state policy framework is so important. We will also including program costs and a rigorous independent evaluation. I was talking earlier this morning with our 2 co-presenters, and we essentially came to the conclusion that we think many across the country believe that investments into these sorts of models from the Washington IBEST program are too expensive, or maybe that they feel like they're too costly. And we are trying to really build compelling evidence to provide otherwise, to basically say these are worth the investments. So we will be adding a significant cost analysis to the field to determine how this will play out. A quick map of our states that are included. Again, we felt like we wanted representation from states from across the country, so we feel like we've got a terrific set of states and their colleges that are eagerly investing themselves into innovation and doing things differently. The staggering numbers that we're really trying to impact around this particular work. So what we signed up for? What are we really working on? And what will we get out of this investment and time? So actually, we here states are committing to over 20,000 credentials by 2015. And one of my credentials are those post-secondary credentials that have labor market value. We're basically mapping curriculum and our pathways to sustainable wages, and we're not supporting pathways that don't lead to these family sustainable jobs. As I mentioned a moment ago, we have a robust state policy agenda, and this is one of the most exciting aspects of the initiative. In fact, this is one of the first times across some of our states that they've focused an explicit policy agenda on underprepared adult learners, and have done so in an explicit way with different partners and state agencies. One of the other key aspects of this is this really the state and college pedagogical transformation by linking adult basic education with career technical education courses. To the magic of IBEST, and to me the most promising part of this initiative is to basically say we are going to short-circuit this learning curve, and at the same time students are engaged in professional technical courses at the community college. They're foundational learning through adult basic skills programs. They are not these long sequences of first you must get your GED, then you might be able to go into a technical program, then you may go further. We're short-circuiting that learning curve. We know that states and colleges need help around these innovative models. Team teaching isn't something we were taught when we went to school or how to do. And so we've really relied on our terrific partners at Washington State and at NCTN and NCAA to provide these professional developments to influence culture shift. And when we talk about culture shift, what we mean is how can we make sure adult basic skills students feel they're part of the college, feel very much integrated into this work. The commitment to working with employers, that it's so very important, are aligning their career pathway credentials to the labor market more than ever before. In fact, that was a key requisite before joining the initiative. We required split and compelling evidence of labor market information so that students would have a good job when they finished their program, and the opportunity to come back into continued learning, Brenda, as you mentioned earlier. And our ambitious transformational effort to create a national movement around iBest. We really believe that with the 8 years of experience Washington State has been able to put in, together with the independent evaluations that they have comprised and that we're able to contribute, we think this is a viable national model for states to really look at. I want to talk to you about some major policy reforms, just to give you a sense of the depth and breadth of the work that these states are courageously undertaking. And we will have all of this information is available for those that are on this webinar at the Accelerating Opportunity website. So, for example, with Illinois, Illinois has their inclusion in Accelerating Opportunity was so important. They came to a window of opportunity where a state performance funding work group was considering performance funding formulas. At the time, adult basic education and measuring and including this important population was not being considered. So the Illinois Community College Board was successful in aiding and getting included adult basic education students into the performance funding framework. And this thing we think is a huge breakthrough for the state and something other states should consistently look at. The second thing that Illinois has done, which I think is so provocative, that for the first time ever, they're actually putting together a strategic statewide workforce development plan, which would include the integration of academics, technical ed, adult ed, and workforce. And it's just this terrific opportunity to institutionalize and bring together funding and think about data systems and tracking and think about a coherent set of strategies across the various silos to work together toward make a difference for this underprepared population. So proud of Illinois. With Kentucky, they've scaled the initiative within 1 year. It started with 8 community colleges. They now have their entire system engaged. And they've done that is they've been able to leverage the grant dollars that have been made available, also including state workforce and developmental ed dollars. They just could team, if you believe it, 75 people from Kentucky to go to the state to have a multi-day symposium to see iBest programs in action. And they're going to do a mentorship model where the colleges that were in it for the first year and a half are essentially helping the other 8 colleges come on board, and it's extraordinarily exciting. Kentucky is doing, which is still emerging, is essentially they are going into a deep level of mapping their career pathways and their curriculum that's being offered across these certificate programs to employer demand, and they're doing that through the use of real-time labor market data. It's called Dynamic Skills, and this process holds terrific promise for other colleges across the country. If you really want to know if your certificates are in demand and producing jobs and what the jobs are asking for, this is the way to go at it. And last in Kansas, using our Greater Funding Toolkit, which is on our Accelerating Opportunity website, essentially look to finance career pathways with very broad state and local agency buy-in. Blake Flanders, who is our state lead there, basically said they've been able to work conversations with a variety of state agencies in ways that they never have before because they're coming together around these underserved populations. So it's really terrific to see these major policy reforms. I'd like to talk about the key instructional reforms that's happening. So I mentioned this is really advancing the whole idea of how adult learners learn. So instead of essentially able to take classes in traditionally delivered adult basic education courses, students without a high school diploma or a GED are getting a ticket into community college. And we're doing it with terrific support services, great career counseling, and matching it up with their career interests, and some off into shorter term leading to longer term credentials. And it's very exciting. And so for us, this integration of basic skills and career technical education is cutting significantly in time. the amount of time students need to get their GED or the foundational learning for their certificate. Obviously, we have been a strong supporter for decades around this idea of career pathways and stable credentials so that you can essentially, jump from off the subway, go get back on the subway, get the next credential, and keep moving up the ladder into higher levels of learning. And all of this comes with ongoing support where campuses are really stepping up their efforts to embed rather than refer students to these various ongoing support services. So as I just mentioned, the key of this is teaching. You develop basic skills instructors in the classroom with the technical faculty at least 50% of the time, with support services essentially wrapping around the entire process. Again, we think has been a really key advocate, key model as part of this initiative. Here's where I will start, I will really end, and that is we're trying to really streamline our adult education pathways with these instructional reforms, where we're embedding career exploration and the contextualized learning, and really trying to make articulated career pathways the way that we do business and make this communication and this alignment with adult basic skills stronger than it is ever before. And also making sure that leads to labor market value and a terrific job at the end of the line for students, with always the opportunity to come back with these articulated pathways when to go into deeper levels of learning. Really what I'd like to do is we have much more great information to come. I want to wrap up my key point, and then I'll turn it back over, and that is, and we have aspirations, that accelerating opportunity and the compelling evidence that is really produced from this work provide a platform to build strong learning environments for students. One of the in the country, I think, to help capture these promising instructional strategies is my professional colleague, Julie Allen Priest. So thanks for the opportunity to present around accelerating opportunity, and I'll now turn it back over to OVAE and Earl to continue the discussion.
Your overview was very interesting, and I think that there are, you have solicited a great interest among our participants, as evidenced by the number of questions that we have coming in. So I'm going to move right into some questions, Barbara, and Barbara, know that we have about, how many questions up here? We have probably 7 or 8 questions up here right now, so if you can gauge the length of your answers so that perhaps we can get to all of these questions, it would be great. The first question that's come in from a couple of folks, Barb, is folks are asking for a little bit more description of the JFF braided funding toolkit, and for you to provide exactly what that is.
Exactly. So what this braided funding toolkit is we've essentially been able to identify through deep research and building the work that CLASP provided we adapted the CLASP federal funding toolkit, but we essentially took that framework and applied it to state and local level. So, for example, you saw the 8 states that were included in this initiative. We're able to take this framework, which identifies all of the available funding sources, and put a deep discussion guide and point to specific streams that really essentially are the platform for both the state and the colleges figure out what sorts of funding streams can be applied to help cover the cost of tuition and resources that are needed to in this work. And so what I would be happy to do, Cheryl, is essentially kind of provide what that framework looks like in a follow-up to you. We can, and what will happen also at the state ABE directors meeting in May, we will have that showcased there as well. So we'll make sure that folks understand and get a chance to look at it.
We have a series of questions about non-GED completers and affordability. Are GED completers paying for the college courses since they are no longer Pell eligible? Can you address how that is being handled in the AO sites?
Yes, I mean, as you all know, right, and this is, has not just impacted AO states, but across the country. for those with a high school diploma or GED, they no longer Pell eligible with cost-cutting measures that were taken earlier. We developed our braided funding toolkit. So, we wanted to assume that students would have little or no debt burden in the career technical courses and certificate programs that they would enroll in. And that's why we essentially put together, let's identify the top 10 to 12 funding sources that both states and colleges can use to help students cover these costs, including WIA dollars, including the college taking steps to possibly waive tuition, including the students taking, they may be doing some self-pay. Sometimes it's community college foundation dollars. We're working in Arkansas on leveraging their TANF dollars for students that are TANF eligible to go in those pathways. So we're really trying to be as creative as we can within these constraints.
We've got another series of questions around credentials. One question is if Excel Opportunities is using the Department of Labor definition of credential that was put out in their TEGL 1510. And get to that question, if you can bundle the answer in the same time. What have you found are the certifications or credentials that are most viable for family-sustained jobs?
Let's see. To the first question, again, knowing kind of for brevity, we do utilize the federal guidelines around the definition of credentials, and that is embedded in what states are able to count, if you will, toward credentials. And we also expanded that to include some exceptions. So if states had some other industry-recognized credentials or others that, even some that they co-created with employers, we created a little bit of wiggle room around what counts as a credential if it results in a certification that has real market value where employers are recognizing it and paying for it. Because there are always these exceptions, as you all know. And remind me of the second question.
I'm sorry. This question was around what definition of credential using, if you're using the Department of Labor definition that they put out in their TEGL.
Yes, we are using that. That is correct. And we provided some latitude for the states to tell us if they had some exceptions to what constituted a credential. I think you mentioned what have we found to be the most viable for family sustainable wages. And so how we've done it, we basically the states and the colleges utilize the living wage calculator and provide evidence that the certificates are mapping to family sustainable wages. And so it's interesting, our data will be essentially coming out in the spring, but, we're always finding the case where short-term credentials equal low pay. That hasn't been the case in all instances. So we'll have a lot more to say later this spring when we get our evaluators and our data analysis to come out, and we'll be able to make stronger statements about what those are.
I have a question about the states that are targeted and how they were selected, and a related question as to whether or not adult education that is affiliated with K-12 agencies are included in this initiative.
Really quick answer. So essentially our funders, together with our partners, determined that at least to start out, we wanted to target those states where adult basic education was somehow included in the structure of higher ed, whether it was in the community college system or in the post-secondary system, because we felt that it would provide the greatest platform for transition rates and partnership. But as you can see, we just added Arkansas, which has their adult education organized not inside post-secondary community colleges. So we are looking at models where K-12, where adult basic skills and adult basic education are not in the post-secondary, and we'll be looking forward to that at some point. We will be taking on a few states in what we're calling an affiliate network, but doing so carefully. And so we do have Arkansas that will provide some evidence around that, but that's how we selected the initial state, Cheryl.
We have one last question I think that we can fit in, and that is a question about teachers what are you doing to support teachers in the ABE field?
Yeah, this is really a area that we've put a lot of time and effort into. We developed a virtual academy that's connected to our Accelerating Opportunity website, and it has some of the best organized resources and tools on the planet around team teaching in this integrated model and the resources that we've been mentioning throughout. So we've got some self-paced team teaching courses that NCTN has developed. Those are available to anyone. You log in and look at those and what those look like. And then we've been developing actually a structured, we call an induction model, where we have specific steps and sequences that any of the team teachers that are going to be engaged in this initiative need to go through in order to be eligible to teach and to get engaged in this. And with, again, our NCTN partners who just are terrific to work with. And we've been leveraging all of the professional development opportunities that each of the states and the colleges have been able to develop as well. So there's a lot that we're doing to make sure that teachers are supported.
Well, again, I'd like to thank Barbara for being with us this morning, afternoon, depending on which coast you're on. Barbara, I think that the breadth of the questions that were asked demonstrate how effective your presentation is and how interested people are in watching the progress they're making in accelerating opportunities. So thank you very much. It's now my pleasure to turn the presentation to our second stage and ask Judith Hollenpress to start a presentation on transforming reading instruction to prepare adult learners for the transition to post-secondary education. Judy, take it from here.
Okay, thanks, Cheryl. I'd like to begin by thanking OVAE for supporting Apt Associates' study on transforming reading instruction. It was a wonderful opportunity both to look in depth at some research and to conduct some case studies of some site visits. This afternoon, I'm going to provide you with an overview of Apt Associates research on reading instruction for adults at the adult secondary education level, and including our key findings and some examples of some promising practices, and with some conclusions and further steps to consider. APS was conducted for the Department of Education's Office of Vocational and Adult Ed to fill a gap in our knowledge about research-based approaches in teaching reading to prepare GED-level learners for post-secondary participation. We first conducted a review of the literature on reading and writing research at the secondary and post-secondary levels. We looked at various state and national initiatives, including the Common Core to define college and career readiness through standards. And we also examined the available information about the GED 2004 requirements. The list pointed to the gaps between college students' reading and writing at the time of their enrollment in post-secondary courses and the knowledge that students need to actually succeed in these courses. There's a very limited literature on GED instruction, so we reviewed the few studies that we could find on processes of GED reading instruction, as well as we looked at information about instructional approaches through published GED curricula and computer-based instruction. To provide a context for the reading and writing instruction that we were looking at, we conducted site visits to 5 programs that were implementing ABE transition to post-secondary education as potential promising practices. And these programs were the GED Bridge to College and Careers at LaGuardia Community College in New York, whom you're going to hear from in a few minutes. The use of the Reading Apprenticeship Program in the context of an allied health iBest at Renton Community College in Washington State. Also went to the Integrated Transitional Studies called iTrans program, which is an academic iBest at Columbia College in Longview, Washington. We went into Oregon to look at the Oregon Pathways for Adult Basic Skills, Transition to Education and Work, called OPABS at Mount Hood Community College in Gresham. And finally, we went to the ABE Transition to College program, which is being conducted in a collaboration between Rochester Adult Education Program and Rochester Community and Technical College in Rochester, Minnesota. So, the 5 programs, 4 of which were based primarily in community colleges, and one was a combination between a K-12 and community college operation. When looked at literature, we found 3 factors that are really critical for all success in post-secondary education and for what some would say is reading success in post-secondary. The first is the ability of students to meet academic demands, reading and writing demands in post-secondary courses. They also need psychosocial skills, sometimes called non-cognitive skills, such as self-direction, self-efficacy, perseverance, innovation that can propel students to persist and learn. And finally, adults' knowledge of college and careers and their movement towards setting goals. When we look at the academic reading and writing demands, a range of skills are associated with success in post-secondary. The development of critical thinking, comprehension, through visualization, synthesis, and evaluation are skills, and this is in contrast to the reading for information that has generally characterized GED instruction historically. Also, college students need to be able to read and process complex texts, including different types of texts, such as occupational textbooks, journal articles, novels with multiple chapters. The issue of students having to increase their depth of background knowledge is written about extensively. A key finding is that GED level students generally do not have that range of background knowledge in subjects such as history and science, which is critical to being able to enroll in post-secondary, both occupational and academic courses, in which, of course, will be an issue for the GED 2014 test that will go, which will require some background content knowledge in those subjects. The college environment also requires that students can apply information and concepts to different situations across different courses. Students need strong oral and written communication skills. The kinds of assignments in terms of class presentations, group projects, and the like will require students both can work independently and with groups. As students enroll in these programs, they're going to have to manage multiple courses and subjects, work across these, and really apply their reading skills to a variety of different areas of content. And finally, looking at the students' ability to navigate using the internet and other knowledge and communication technologies. The reading demands, once you start to look at the internet and these other technologies, are different than looking at printed text, and students need to be able to navigate between these two. The whole issue of non-academic skills and dispositions, psychosocial skills, has been recognized in the literature for a long time, but is now a part of most programs that are focused on basic skills transition to post-secondary education. And these skills are multifaceted. Some of them typically defined as psychosocial, looking at note-taking, time management, and study skills. Students need to have a good sense of self-direction, self-regulation, so that they can monitor their progress, they can monitor their time and how they apply their studying to different types of assignments. And, of course, they need to be motivated and have a sense of self-efficacy about their knowledge and their ability to learn new information. Finally, the third part of this is the college and career knowledge and goals. What we've seen and what we read in the literature is that it's really important for students to have a goal as they begin this transition process. Many adults, basic education students, even at the GED level, have not yet set a goal, and very often it's due to their lack of knowledge about the local labor market and the skills and knowledge required for jobs in the labor market, as well as the educational requirements of these jobs. So having this realm of information included in reading and writing instruction is one way to kind of move students who have not yet set goals or done the kind of background research they need to do to understand what their skills and interests are and how those map onto the labor market and their goals can be addressed. Second approaches to reading instruction for post-secondary success. I'm going to go over the key approaches that we've seen in the literature and give you a couple of examples from the sites. I'm not going to reference LaGuardia's work because Amy is going to talk about that in her presentation, and we'll map back to a lot of these various approaches. The first trend is to really integrate reading and writing instruction, and I'll talk about two aspects of this. One is this whole issue of contextualization, integration. There are many efforts underway to teach reading and writing as part of occupational instruction, which we see in the iBest and iBest-like courses, where the focus is on occupational instruction, and then that is used as the base to strengthen the reading and writing and math skills as needed. And another approach is to integrate occupational themes into basic skills instruction, and have examples from both of these. First one in the integrating reading and writing teaching the reading and writing as part of occupational instruction. Both the best program in Renton Community College that was looking at CNA, Certified Nursing Assistant, and phlebotomy instruction. They were teaching reading and writing in the context of those allied health subjects, and the integrated the trans program, integrated transition studies program in Lower Columbia College. They were teaching humanities, and then was the college subject, and then integrating reading and writing in the context of the humanities course. In terms of the occupational theme integration, Amy will tell you what they have done at LaGuardia, and in Oregon at the OPEBS project at Mount Hood, they looked at key themes, allied health, from manufacturing and from sales and service as high demand occupational areas in the state, and information from those occupations was integrated into the basic skills instruction there. An aspect of integration of reading and writing has to do with the extent to which you are encouraging students to write as they read. And there are many strategies that have been tested with upper middle school and high school students that appear to be effective with adults as well. And we're looking at, taking notes during courses, reacting to different reading messages by using taking my mind went rugs and the like, and also having students synthesize text and and interpret what they're seeing in reading in the text. Psytrans is a good example where, in the context of the humanities course, students were asked to do a lot of synthesis. They were asked to do summarization, and as part of their ongoing reading, and also begin to do some structural analysis. In terms of developing background knowledge purposefully, the iTrans project or program also gave students additional readings to supplement their knowledge of humanities. There are also some CD materials available They were on the topic that was being discussed in the humanities course, and students also had the option of listening to information about that particular subject. All of these projects emphasized higher order thinking skills in terms of particularly the summarization, which is a skill that is sometimes not very well developed in GED instruction. And in the Rochester program, the ABE instructor worked with the developmental education instructor to really emphasize a higher level of reading instruction that really promoted students' development of these skills. Use various forms of text is a common approach to expand reading ability, and this is done through in BEST project in Renton, which was focused on allied health. They were taught to understand medical vocabulary and navigating medical textbooks, looking at chart writing and the like. And finally, a lot of these college courses, these ABE transition courses, were modeled on college courses in terms of the types of assignments, much more independent work. They all gave homework, and many of them had group projects. So this, in kind of a very quick nutshell, is a synthesis of these key approaches that we saw both in the literature and in practice in these sites. So in conclusion, we find that there's generally agreement about the reading skills that adults at the GED level need to meet the academic demands of entry-level post-secondary courses, such as the summarization, synthesis, and evaluation. There's all agreement about the need to engage GED-level learners with a wider range of reading materials than traditionally have been used to prepare adults for the GED tests, such as occupational textbooks, novels, journal articles, and different kinds of texts that integrate charts and graphs and different types of data of that nature. There is a need to develop background knowledge, and that can be done, by extension, given additional materials to read, looking at alternative ways of discussing the background information during the courses. And we also find that the instruction that integrates teaching of reading and writing can facilitate adults' development of comprehension skills and increase their overall ability to write text. What is still not well documented in the literature is the particular processes that are required for students to create text. There's research on this, the K through 8. Less of that has been tested with adults. So this whole issue of sentence structure and grammar and the like are, yet be tested very well with adults. Finally, research in adults at the GED level is needed to identify effective strategies, developing comprehension skills, particularly concerning the extent to which multi-step comprehension strategies can be easily understood and used by learners. There is some limited research in adults' use of comprehension strategies, and there have been mixed findings about the use of such strategies, so more investigation is needed. We also observe that over a number of different approaches are being used to teach basic skills in the context of occupational information or to integrate occupational and basic skills instruction. The use of the terminology of contextualization and integration can be confusing. Consistent use of the terms would promote better understanding and communication. Also, while contextualized instruction is viewed as instrumental in engaging and motivating learners, the research on the use of contextualized and integrated instruction is limited, and we could benefit from more rigorous studies that would inform particular approaches to these processes. Also, we saw that instructors' knowledge about the use of results from research in reading and writing instruction is evolving, and their instruction is really primarily guided by their background and experience which one would expect. This suggests that perhaps more efforts may be needed to package some of the professional development that is based on available research and can be easily accessible to instructors. Two other conclusions are one has to do with teaching a career and college awareness, the development of non-academic skills. The content of career and college awareness seems to be an engaging context for developing comprehension in writing. There are various approaches being used in the field of adult education could benefit, again, from evidence on more effective approaches for using this context to develop basic skills. There also appears to be a trend in adult basic education to integrate career and college awareness in instruction rather than to teach discrete courses for study skills and time management. In closing, I think that the available research on reading and writing instruction approaches to a number of strategies that can be implemented in adult basic education to prepare GED learners for post-secondary success, and that overall we would benefit from more systematic testing of these approaches, and that would help to advance both our knowledge of what works in terms of teaching, but also could inform future professional development of instructors.
Thank you. I think that your presentation has been extremely informative, and we do have a number of questions that we probably will not be able to get to in the limited amount of time that we have available. But I'd like to ask just maybe a couple of questions that is most closely related to what you've talked about. The question that's in, Judy, that I think would be great to take a few minutes to talk about is that there is a question here asking, the factors for success are demanding and take time for students to develop. Is this possible in the accelerated mode, quote unquote, discussed previously in the accelerating opportunities? So can you talk a little bit about what it really takes to develop these skills and the movement towards accelerated learning?
It is indeed challenging, and it does take a long time. What we have seen in practice, and it's a moving target, as we know, as folks in the field begin to out different approaches, they are somewhat targeting. So even if you have a class with students who test, say, at the adult secondary level, as defined by the National Reporting System, obviously their skills in reading and writing are varied, even though the test scores are within a limited range. And what we observe is that instructors are trying to address all of those key approaches in small ways. And to the extent to which these instructors in ABE have looked at what is going on in their local community college, and sometimes it's the same institution, sometimes it's the partner colleges, to try to benchmark what the reading and writing demands are. The entry level occupational courses or academic courses, they have a little better gauge to figure out, for example, how to expand their materials. The kinds of writing science to emphasize in these transition courses. Part of this is, first of all, understanding really what the gaps are with current students, and then looking again perhaps at their goals of college and career, and then trying to obtain a better idea of what the local colleges are doing, and then take information back and target through how the kinds of skills they teach, the types of that they use, and the kinds of assignments that they give.
Thank you. Judy, I'd like just to squeeze one more question in that perhaps you can do a real quick summary answer since we're getting low on time. About a question about the applicability of this approach to our ESL students. And this comes from a person that's strongly a program that's strongly directing teachers to implement career pathways, bridges to college, and accelerated learning in their core ESL curriculum. And this person is wanting to know whether or not this is a beneficial approach for students whose basic need is still English language learning.
Right. And the history of the iBest program in Washington State is that they began, iBest was first implemented actually in ESL with ESL students. So there's a history with many colleges in New York, in Washington State, having looked at level ESL students, enrolled in entry-level occupational courses that were also receiving ESL instruction while they were in those college credit-bearing courses. In Oregon, there has been some work, particularly looking at the college and career awareness course, which is pegged at about a 7th to 8th grade reading level, and is a course that in Oregon is taught at both a pre-bridge and a bridge level, and it's being now tried with upper-level ESL students. So again, it probably makes a difference as to what the are with the student skills and the extent to which one can integrate this, ESL instruction in the context of the occupational teaching.
That was a great answer to that question, and I think that your presentation has been spot on, Judy, as it always is. I'd like to take this opportunity to turn the webinar over to Amy, and if you can share your experiences at LaGuardia and bring home to the practitioner level for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. It's a real pleasure for us to participate in the webinar today and be able to share our work. LaGuardia and CUNY have been spending a lot of efforts to transform our adult ed classes and our systems to help our students transition to post-secondary ed, and I really want to appreciate OVAE and JFF and Judy. We've learned a lot from the work and practices of your organizations along the way. For those of you who don't know, I just want to give a little bit of background. We're located in New York City. We're part of the City University of New York system. We're large and very diverse urban campus. We serve about 15,000 undergraduate students in degree programs and about 50,000 non-credit adult and continuing ed students, a majority of whom are in ESL, basic education, GED, and adult literacy, and professional and certification programs. As I said, our student body here in Queens, New York is very diverse, representing, I think, the most diverse county in the world, and our students come from over 150 different countries and speak more than 100 native or mother languages. I'm the director of the pre-college academic programming department. Our department is part of the adult and continuing ed division. In our department, we serve about 1,600 students each year in comprehensive academic, college readiness, college prep, GED, ESL, and certificate training programs. Our work focuses on three main areas. We collaborate with campus partners, our professional and technical partners on the campus, to deliver integrated career pathways programs. We call them NIBEST here because we took a lot of inspiration from our colleagues in Washington State, but we have modified them to do it in a New York style way. And we help to build basic skills in the context of helping adult students earn a certification so that they can go to work. The second big area of our work is professional development around contextualized literacy and how to develop integrated career pathways programs. And the third and big piece of our work is our GED Bridge to College and Career programs, which is going to be the focus of our presentation today, and was also the program that Judy studied as part of her look into reading. Just say a word about why focus on the high school equivalency or GED preparation here at LaGuardia. The high school equivalency is very important in New York in terms of an educational pathway. The City University and the State University of New York have required a high school diploma or a GED as criteria for entry into credit-bearing and degree programs. So the high school equivalency has been the gateway credential for our adult students, unlike other states where students have been able to access community college and credit and degree-bearing programs. The reason that it's very important to us here in Queens is that 25% or more of adults over the age of 19 in just the continuous zip codes around our college are without a high school diploma. There's just a tremendous need to bring people, adults, back to school, have them earn the high school equivalency, and go on to post-secondary so they can compete in today's economy. With we launched an initiative called the GED Bridge to College and Careers Project back in 2007. Since then, we've served more than 700 students in the program. The program serves adult students 19 years or older who need to earn a high school equivalency and have career aspirations in the field of healthcare, business, or science. The program's designed as a springboard to either college or post-secondary professional certification training. Bridge classes provide career-focused academic preparation that works to develop students' reading, writing, and math skills in preparation both for the GED examination and post-secondary education simultaneously. Coursework is contextualized and it investigates themes in healthcare, business, or science in order to improve students' academic skills. And the slide that you're looking at represents the 3 tracks that we offer to students as they enter, and students would enter into one of these classes as a cohort. LaGuardia has a long history of providing GED programming to out-of-school youth, formerly incarcerated youth and adults, to adult education populations in general. And on campus, we probably serve about 3,000 students a year. In 2006, we did an informal study and found that we could do a much better job overall of retaining students in our adult and GED programs, helping them to earn the GED, and then in transitioning to post-secondary. Essentially what we discovered was that not many of our GED earners were actually moving on to post-secondary. The program has been designed as an access model for students who lack literacy proficiencies and credentials that they need to get into college. We intentionally designed the program so that we could accept people in our bridge classes that read at the 7th grade level and above, because a majority of students coming to our campus are actually testing below the 8th grade but are asking for high school equivalency preparation. We're listening and thinking, how do we redesign, how do we transform our adult education programs, or, we approach this. When we began to redesign the GED model back in 2006, 3 major areas sort of emerged. First is that the Bridge program has a very intentional program design that takes into account students' needs and goals, and we have a very intentional model for building staff capacity and our teacher effectiveness. We've also been working continuously to improve the curriculum to align the academic skills to issues and topics in the fields of business, science, and health, so that the discipline-focused or contextualized-focused curriculum aligns to the way a college would organize itself and introduces students to thinking in a discipline. And finally, we've worked really hard over the last few years to work across the college systems and forge partnerships with the student enrollment, admissions office, financial aid that foster effective and seamless transitions for students moving across from adult ed into the credit side. Quickly, I'd like to say that part of the bridge design includes having a model that's cohort-based so that students and follows the college calendar so that students enter course and are there for an entire semester learning together. We do offer part-time day and evening classes because we realize that our students have many adult responsibilities, many are working and have children and other responsibilities and cannot be in school full-time. Building on the college model, the semester includes capstone assignments that serve as a portfolio of student progress and their academic skill development. Projects require students to synthesize content and ideas they've explored in their discipline or their sector of focus during the semester, and these types of assignments allow students to build their academic sense of self-efficacy and their investment in their learning over the long term. The training development of our teachers is central to Bridge program practice. Our team works collaboratively to constantly revise the curriculum and to make sure that we're using effective case management strategies and developing classroom cultures that are effective. The really offers an early and ongoing focus on post-secondary transition to our adult students coming in. It starts at the point of intake in the admissions sessions, where the program is portrayed as a first step in the path to college and better careers rather than an end point. And over the course of the semester, students complete a set of college and career activities that are academic in nature, but help students explore the career pathways, what the transitional experience will be, and to set goals. As I said, the one hallmarks of, or really the heart of our Bridge model is that it's contextualized career-focused curriculum. That curriculum is designed around sector-focused material that helps students begin to think in a discipline. When you go to college, you pick a major and you begin to develop a body of knowledge. When you become a professional, you have a certain set of not just vocabulary, but practices and ways of knowing and information, and starting that focus on a discipline and professional body of knowledge in the pre-college phase has been very effective. The curriculum takes into account what the academic skills and needs of students have to pass the GED, but really goes beyond to align to those skills that are also required in college and post-secondary training. The contextualized curriculum also offers opportunities for our teachers and our practitioners to shift the burden away from the standardized test to a more rigorous and comprehensive set of learning outcomes and objectives that can include essays, group projects, discussions, students' academic self-evaluation, and it's through the participation in these types of activities that students really learn to monitor their own progress and see their own academic progress, which is a key skill when they go to college and become much more independent. Components of our classroom include the use of interdisciplinary texts and a range of texts, as you was talking about earlier. The students do a lot of reading and writing activities, writing for comprehension that help them deepen their interaction with the text and their understanding of it. Our math projects incorporate a lot of real-world data. Students may be working on projects that help them take information from surveys and studies and incorporate that into their own graphs and charts and perform their own analysis of original source materials. For those who are really interested in, well, what does this really look like at the classroom level, this is just a quick snapshot of the types of units and themes that students in the Bridge to Health and the Bridge to Business class would be exploring. As the semester moves along, students participate in units that are focused around central concepts in their field of interest. Sector-focused units are usually focused around a central text that explores one issue and incorporates supplemental readings and other materials to support the academic skills and the concept development in these areas. Sort of key feature of our program redesign involves this alignment with post-secondary systems, and that in that way we mean the faculty on the degree side of the house and also our professional and technical faculty both here on campus and at other flagship programs in New York. We've done a lot of work to get input from the faculty on our curriculum design so that we can understand what it means to learn and think in these different disciplines. And an example of that would be that in the healthcare field, there's a lot of use of case studies to teach students, nursing students, and occupational and therapists and physical therapy students about servicing clients. And so we, in the Bridge, would include some of those types of case studies and learnings at that earlier point to help in the transition. Focus a lot on the social integration of our students. A lot of the research on first-year retention and success in college has to do with students becoming both socially integrated and academically. So our GED students are on campus. They're using the same facilities. They have college IDs. They have access to the student services and a lot of the college life activities that we have here. We bring in our alumni and faculty into the Bridge classrooms, and we do this to try to foster relationships that will provide a seamless pathway in all the offices of the college. In closing, I just want to say that for those of you who are interested, between fall 2010 and spring 2012, MDRC, which is a national social research firm, conducted a random assignment evaluation to examine the impacts of our Bridge program on student outcomes. The policy brief should be out any day, and we'd be happy to share that with you. It's shown that we have higher success rates in our GED Bridge classes and a higher transition rate. I'd like to thank you for listening. If you're interested in our work, I welcome you to visit our website, and you're welcome also to come and see the classes in person if you're here in New York. Thank you.
I think we're all waiting with great anticipation to see the full written report, the evaluation. It is just so incredibly important to document and evaluate these things that we believe are making a big difference in the lives of our students. I have quite a few questions, Amy, but unfortunately I think we'll only be able to take one because we are bumping up against our time. And I will give opportunity for folks that did not get their questions answered to work directly with our panelists on getting those things answered. But the question that we have for you right now, Amy, came in from the audience, and it's about ESL students and GED students. And the question is, have you ever run cohorts with ESL students and GED students working within one cohort? And if so, how successful was the commingling of that effort?
That's a great question. Because of the nature of our community here in Queens, many of our students here at LaGuardia, whether they be in basic education, GED, or more traditional EL or ESL classes, may have English as a second language. And so in our Bridge class, I'd say maybe close to 50% of the students have English as a second language, but they are measured on the TABE and they're reading at the 7th grade level above, so they have a fairly high level of academic English when they enter. But we do work with students in the classroom in different ways. The ESL and the second language learning students have different sort of issues that have to be worked through in their academic writing. The native-born students show in writing certain patterns and habits that may be different from a student who's learning English as a second language, and the teacher trained to respond to both.
Thank you, Amy, and I also want to thank Cheryl for moderating today's discussion. I'm really sorry that the presenters can't hear the applause from everyone who tuned in to the view and hear the event. It was a fascinating and informative webinar on the importance of educating our adult students in AE and GED programs to make the transition to post-secondary education and training. All presenters today were incredibly thorough and insightful. Your work is terrific, and it's important to hear all the good, great, innovative work you're doing to move AE and GED programs in the right direction. I know folks who are listening were able to learn so much from the presentations you gave and will continue these important conversations in their organizations. So thank you very much, Barbara, Judy, and Amy, for taking time to present your important work. And really thank you to our large and engaged audience for your thoughtful questions. Unfortunately, we ran out of time and could get to all of them. It does show the tremendous interest in this work out there in the field. If it's the case that your question wasn't answered or have a subsequent follow-up question, we encourage you to reach out to your peers during the session. They were gracious enough to say they would be happy to continue the discussions with all of you. The webinar will also be archived and accessible at a future date, so feel free to check back on our website, www.ed.gov/OVAE, for more details. I also want to note that you'll have an opportunity to continue engaging with the department and community college experts in our upcoming events. This was just the first of our 2013 Community College webinar series, which will continue early next month. We invite you all to participate in the event. In April, we'll focus on innovative correctional and reentry education programs at community colleges. So stay tuned for more details. We'll bring out more information in the upcoming events along with the registration link. So I want to thank again our partners on this series, AACC and ACCT, for their involvement and input to the development of this event. I want to thank Cheryl Keenan, the Director of our Adult Education and Literacy Division here in OVAE, for moderating. And I want to thank Matt Valerius, who organized our whole today's webinar and our entire webinar series. And I want to thank him for his cool demeanor while we worked out all our technical problems. Lastly, thank everyone who logged in and participated in this web today for all questions and interest and enthusiasm on this issue. We look forward to engaging with all of you on future events. Thank you and take care.